Today's review is Apocalypse Now. This, undoubtedly, absolutely, one of my favorite movies of all time. In my opinion, it's not only the best war film ever made, one of the best of all films ever made, one of the finest achievements in cinematic history, in my opinion. Just absolutely incredible, one of the best. I've seen this so many times, absolute favorite of mine, a perfect movie, in my opinion. Definitely right away it does capture your attention with its opening, where, right away it does herald something unique, something special. There's no logos, no opening credits, nothing like that. You just see right off the bat the jungle in Vietnam, and you hear the helicopter blades going. But the thing is, it's like distorted at first, so you're not quite sure what the sound is. So it's like going like wah 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 wah. Then it kind of becomes clearer and clearer, and so here's with that opening, it's almost like uh, transforming into like one plane of consciousness into another, where you're being brought into this world, and you see the madness unfold. Like, you see the quietness of the jungle, of the landscape, then boom, fire everywhere, and the Doors, the end plays on the soundtrack, which is really great. Then of course we meet Captain Willard, played by Martin Sheen, one of his best roles, probably his best role ever. So what we kind of get the sense of is kind of, with this character, with the Captain Willard character, it is something that they sort of touched upon in something like a movie like, the Hurt Locker, where Jeremy Renner's character, but this one does it just about 1,000 times better, 1,000,000 times better. Basically, this character, this man of the army, knows nothing else in life, has no other life but war and death and killing. He's just waiting for his mission. He's waiting for his purpose to be fulfilled. And then he gets his wish, basically. So that opening scene with Sheen in the hotel room, just kind of submerging into his own madness, is incredible, and perfectly sets the tone for the movie, where he does get his mission, and this is a mission like no other that he's ever gotten, to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando, who has gone off the wall, basically. He's gone nuts. He's just gone AWOL from the military, started his tribe, where he has become a god to an indigenous tribe. His methods are very much unsound, as they're mentioned, but as we learn later through Willard, there doesn't appear to be any method at all. So that's kind of the starting point of it. The movie is very loosely adapted from Joseph Conrad's Hearts of Darkness, which just have a fairly similar skeletal make of the plot. But this, of course, is modernized, or was modernized at the time, to fit the landscape of the Vietnam War. Definitely the production of the movie is worthy of note as well. Like, this is, one of the more interesting and just attention-grabbing stories of a movie being filmed, probably since Citizen Kane, where in early development they're actually planning to shoot the movie in Vietnam during the Vietnam War as a faux documentary, basically, but that didn't appear to be the case, but didn't make the movie any less pleasant to film for Coppola and his cast. So essentially it is about Willard going on this journey and these travels to find Kurtz, and the madness, the absolute madness of war that he finds along the way. And definitely, it's one of the things that you'll say about a movie is, oh, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. This movie's about both, so you get the best of both worlds. So every scene in this movie is absolutely crucial. I particularly like the section of the movie where they come upon Lieutenant Kilgore, played by Robert Duvall, who's excellent as well. One of Duvall's best roles, too. Basically, is the surfing obsessed, just kind of wild card in this army. Like, he knows very well that basically this is a war with no rules. He's gonna get his boys out, go surfing, even in the shit. Basically, even when bombs are dropping on cities. There's that, of course, famous section of the movie, famous scene, famous spectacle of the movie, where they're in the choppers, they're playing Ride of the Valkyries, and it's so great. And meanwhile, it's like, we're gonna surf. Charlie, don't surf. Great movie. And of course, the famous line about napalm in the morning, smells like victory. Most people shorten that because it is a longer speech than that. But most people remember it as, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It smells like victory. Very memorable section of the movie. And Duvall, he was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his role. I think he should have won. I can't remember off the top of my head who won that year, but oh man, he's so good. It's such a funny role, and so unlike what other roles that he's done before, I think. So that really makes it something unique in a great actor's career. And he does really only occupy a small section of the film, so he definitely leaves an impression, especially since he is fairly early on, and a lot of the later scenes of the movie are occupied so strongly by Brando. I think it says a lot that he was nominated over someone like Brando. Brando's Brando, basically. So that says a lot about his performance. But definitely, I think the key, even with Duvall, even with Brando, it's definitely Martin Sheen's movie. Like, he makes the movie absolutely 100% what it is, because we do follow this character, and we get a sense of his own madness and how it reflects upon the madness of war, and how he needs this purpose to fulfill. This becomes his obsession, trying to track down Kurtz. And one of the interesting things about the movie, in addition to everything else, I mean, I could do a whole other review, like reviewing like Hearts of Darkness, which is the documentary on the making of the film, which is also included on this Blu-ray set, by the way. So this includes both the Apocalypse Now theatrical version, the Redux version, which was released in 2001, I believe, as well as Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's journey, the documentary on the making of the film. But yeah, I mean, aside from all that, I mean, it's definitely Sheen and his character, and in particular the narration of the film. Apparently, like the narration, it was a whole separate entity. It was written separately, from the original screenplay of the film. Mostly because I think they needed to add a little bit something to kind of increase the depth and complexity of the character, and kind of serve the narrative, basically, because a lot is happening, and things kind of go through and progress fairly quickly, so it's a good way to keep track of where we are in the story, basically. And with his narration, you really get a sense of this character, and in some cases, narration really can make or break a movie. Like, case in point, Blade Runner. Like, in the original theatrical version of that movie, they had that horrible narration with Harrison Ford, pretty much just spelling out the movie for you, and that ruined the movie. But I try to think of Apocalypse Now without the narration, and that is just impossible to think of. I mean, honestly, like, you need the narration in this movie, I think, because it does really add a whole other level. And not only does he, in so many ways, explain the story, but not in like a down-putting way, like a way that talks down to us in the audience, but it gives us his kind of internal monologue, gives us what's going on in his head, basically, and as he transforms even further from the character he is, kind of becoming sort of like, taking the mantle from Kurtz at the very end of the movie. After, spoiler alert, he assassinates him, which, sorry, the movie's pretty old, so sorry if I'm spoiling the ending for you, but that's the whole point of the movie. Him killing the character, and definitely, I mean, it is, the destination of the film is definitely, what we're all kind of driving towards, what the movie is ultimately leading to, and it's a fantastic final sequence. And the funny thing is, like, it is a journey, and there's steps along the way. There's certain characters and oddities that occur along the way, like with the Kilgore character, like with the Playboy bunnies at the USO, like the bombing of the Hanoi Bridge, and in the Redux version, the French plantation. But right before we get to the main event with Marlon Brando's character, with Colonel Kurtz, we have just a tiny little pit stop with Dennis Hopper playing the journalist who's pretty much fell under the spell of Kurtz, and thinks he's a god, and he's a god, man, he's brilliant, man. Dennis Hopper is so great in this movie. So just another kind of unexpected pleasure of this movie, and really something that just makes it so unique. Like, we've gone this far, then all of a sudden we have Dennis Hopper's ranting, which I love. I mean, he's great in the movie as well. Much like with Duvall, one, he gives one of his best performances, and two, he really stands out despite a small portion in the movie. But once Willard, I should say, does finally meet with Kurtz, it does become this more philosophical kind of section of the movie where he's almost kind of wearing him down, and you kind of think it's going to be this big standoff, but like a military, whatever. But no, it's more cerebral. It's more a mental kind of fencing that they're doing. In most cases, it is Willard just kind of listening, because at this point he's kind of empathized with him. He's kind of understanding him, seeing himself in him, basically, and in so many ways almost falling under his spell. But they're too equal for him to really kind of acquiesce to his manipulation, sort of. But it is very interesting, with the monologues that Brando delivers. I mean, obviously, again, this is kind of like a story about the making behind of the movie, but when it reached to that point of the movie, Brando shows up. He's like 500 pounds. Coppola's like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna kill myself." I shouldn't joke about that, because he actually, was on the verge of suicide for a lot of parts of this movie. But it almost kind of made it a better movie, because we see him in the shadows, distorted, and that helps beautifully with the movie. And so we don't get quite a good look at him, and in so many ways it is very fitting with the character, because in essence he is a shadow of a man that he used to be, which is very interesting. And Brando, I mean, he's done, name it, he's an absolute legend of an actor. Streetcar Named Desire, The Godfather, of course, and this as well. I mean, this is probably one of his, definitely among his best performances. It's kind of cheesy a little bit, but I like it. He's like, I saw a snail crawling on the edge of a straight razor. That is my dream. That is my nightmare. Yeah, that's my Marlon Brando impression. But yeah, I think he's absolutely great in the movie, and if it were any other actor, I don't think it would quite work as well, because even if you look at it from a certain standpoint of things, like what I've kind of talked about with other movies, particularly movies in the 70s, where directors did take a certain approach where the films were more method. They were more documentary-like. And the same can be said of the actors. So you have an actor like Sheen, who, in his own way, under Coppola's direction, he went through hell along with making the movie. And I think he suffered a heart attack while making this movie, which, that was not good, obviously, but he went through shit. I mean, what Coppola says of the movie, this movie isn't about Vietnam. This movie is Vietnam. And that's absolutely true in every sense of the word. But you have an actor like Sheen, under direction of someone like Coppola, kind of method, kind of trying to go for realism. But then you have a previous generation actor like Brando, who does things definitely a little bit differently. I mean, that's an understatement when it comes to Brando, for sure. But because we have these two actors with two different acting sensibilities, their clash seems kind of more all the genuine for it. Because Kurtz himself, he is kind of a more surreal kind of personality and a more kind of larger than life presence. So I think it does work very well in the final part of the film. And because again, with the limitations due to his weight, and Brando's just general Brando-ness, they had to go about it a certain way, go about the assassination in a different way. So it isn't quite, the military combat standoff that you may be expecting, but it's a very quiet and disheartening close to this character's journey, basically, and because Willard does see so much of himself in him, and because he does empathize, we very much believe that he's doing what he wants him to do, and what he wants him to do is kill him, basically, and that's what he does. And they kind of cut it together with footage of the tribe sacrificing a bull, and so we see the contrast to that, and so I think that works very well. It's like it's Willard's sacrifice to the war gods, basically, giving him this heretic and taking his place, basically, and also like what Coppola has mentioned, going beyond war. So that's kind of the theme and the ultimate purpose of Willard's journey. Which it's just fantastic. I love this movie so much. I mean, try as I may, I can't put quite into words what I want to about this movie, but the whole story is fantastic. Willard's journey is fantastic. The acting is fantastic. The production value is absolutely fantastic. This really does feel like you're on that boat with Willard. You are, looking on the sidelines. You are bird's eye view. Fly on the wall, whatever expression you want to use, you're there in the shit, and that's quite something. Definitely, the cast. Another person I want to mention was Lawrence Fishburne in one of his first roles. He had to be like 16 when he first made this movie. He's great in it. Also, a small appearance from Harrison Ford as one of the clerks at the beginning. He drops the papers, and that's his whole role. He's like, "Oops, I dropped the papers." Sad card. Anyway, yeah. So the movie, it's just one of my absolute favorite movies. Absolutely. Now, another thing that I do want to mention, sort of, is the fact that there are two versions of the movie. The Redux version, for just a short period of time, it was pretty much the only version you could easily find. And I still have that DVD lying around somewhere because it was kind of like a big deal. Back in 2001, they did the theatrical re-release. Oh, man, I would kill to see this movie in the theaters, honestly. Or, pay admission price. But if I ever get the chance. Basically, it kind of boils down to, which version is quite better. And it's hard for me to say. I mean, definitely the Redux version, it expands upon the movie. It makes it a more epic experience, basically, and I like that. It adds a lot of good things to it. There's more of the Kilgore character where he's trying to track down the missing surfboard, which I liked, and there's a little bit more with Brando. Kind of what I think ultimately sets it apart as so much the inferior version of the film. Is the plantation scene, the French plantation scene, which is an interesting scene. I mean, it kind of goes deep into the heart of the how the Vietnam War started, basically, and kind of going to that sort of original inception of it, basically. So they kind of just see this whole sort of mini community just in the middle of this insanity, just trying to live, and they're far apart, and it is surreal, and it helps fit more with the surreality of the movie, basically. But in another kind of way, it does pretty much stop the movie short. It's a scene that goes on for a little too long, and ultimately I do think it kind of messes with the pace a little bit. So, when I'm watching the Redux version, I'm enjoying it, whatever, and then I reach that scene, I'm like, ooh, I don't know, am I ready for this? Do I want to go through this? Should I fast forward? So, yeah, in the long run, I do generally like the theatrical cut better. That runs at approximately 2 hours 45 minutes, which I think is a fair running time of the film. Definitely not a short film. Still feels epic. Still feels grand. Still gets all the grand spectacle of the film, the grand philosophy of the film, the ultimate point of the film. But really, I mean, with the Redux version, you're just getting too much of a good thing, and there's nothing quite wrong with that. simply it makes the movie longer, more of an extended experience. So I don't think it messes with anything too much, except for maybe the pace a little bit. So, you know, I would say the theatrical version is just a little bit better. But yeah, whatever version I'm watching, this is an absolute masterpiece, one of the best films ever made. Coppola, I mean, he's done many great movies. He's done the Godfather movies. He's done The Conversation. He's done Dracula, which I loved as well. Let's not talk about Jack or Twixt. Rainmaker was okay, but this is absolutely his masterpiece. This is going to be the movie where scholars are going to be like, this is what you can achieve if you're fucking insane, and you have a filmmaker's drive and a filmmaker's madness, and so, you know, this is his stroke of brilliance. I think it's an absolutely fantastic film. I can't do justice in my own words speaking of it, but obviously you don't need me to tell you what a great movie this is. Film critics, audiences everywhere have praised this film since the very beginning. This was, of course, nominated for Best Picture in 1979. Unfortunately, it didn't win, which is kind of a bummer, because, I mean, this is one of the best movies ever made. I can't believe it didn't win. Kramer versus Kramer won. I like Kramer versus Kramer. I like Dustin Hoffman. I think it's a fine movie, a good drama. But Apocalypse Now, forget it. This should have won. You know, maybe they didn't give it the award. Maybe because, you know, the previous year the Deer Hunter won, so they didn't want to make it. You know, like year after year Vietnam War movies win. Meanwhile, a decade later, less than a decade later, Sheen Sun's Vietnam War movie Platoon won. So that's kind of interesting. But this movie blows them all out of the water. Probably my top 10 movies of all time. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I can't praise it highly enough. If you haven't seen this movie, I should say, please don't worry none about me spoiling the movie for you. It's not about, you know, basic bullet points of the plot. It is about the experience. It is an experience that I think anybody who has any kind of interest or passion for film should watch and should experience, because it's one like no others. It is a very unique film that stands on its own in its own medium, in its own cinematic medium. Absolutely masterful. I really like it. That's basically what I'm driving towards here. So, should it have won Best Picture? Absolutely fucking lootly. It should have, but it didn't. But, you know, that won't change my opinion of the movie, obviously. I think it's a fantastic film. So yeah, that's pretty much my review. I think I've rambled on long enough. Hopefully some of this is coherent, but that'll do it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and more reviews to come. And until then, it's just the horror. The horror.